another episode of Play Like a Jet Live with U Stadium. Very exciting. We're only 8 days away from the NFL draft. Clayton, man, how you going? We are getting very, very close now.
Dude, I need it. We only got a week, barely over a week left, but I'm hanging in there by all counts.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do today, we're going to have John Grella pop on the phone. He was the director of communications with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, talk everything from the media, smoke screens, all that kind of thing. We're going to jump into a little bit of the BYU offense, obviously assuming that Zach Wilson is the pick at number 2. We're going to look at some similarities between theirs and the 49ers offense last year. And then maybe look at some day 3 picks the Jets could make, some guys we like, some of the testing numbers and all those kind of things. So I guess before we do that, I want to jump into a giveaway that U Stadium's running. It's a mock draft giveaway and something that all of you listening should definitely get on top of. So if you head onto the U Stadium app now, if you don't have it, make sure you download it. Click on the top banner that says Mega Mock Draft and enter your email address. Nick and the guys will then send you a link and you can enter that way. Pretty much we're looking at winning Xbox, jerseys, draft hats, all that kind of thing. So make sure you look at the U Stadium app and you jump on that now. So while we, as you can see it there on the screen, thanks for that splash. Make sure you head over to U Stadium app. If you haven't got it already, make sure you're on it. I know all of us are, and it's a must-have come draft time and the NFL season. So while we wait for John to get on the phone, Clay, I guess maybe let's start with some day 3 targets. I know we were just talking before we went live. Last week, we talked about some day 2 guys. We're going to talk about the BYU offense. So a guy we thought would be a great starting point would be Brady Christensen, who played left tackle for BYU Cougars last year. And man, his pro day was something special. Something kind of went under the radar, I think, a little bit when Zach Wilson's throwing and all those kind of things stole the spotlight. But man, Brady Christensen, he jumped out of the roof. He ran extremely quickly, and his tape's pretty impressive as well. So what's your thoughts on Brady Christensen, Clay?
Yeah, I mean, if we do run the zone offense like we plan on doing, he's a perfect fit. I mean, like you just said, he's very athletic. He fits the mold of what they'd be looking for. Obviously, he would be playing left tackle like he did at BYU. You'd have to move to right tackle, which means he'd most likely have to sit year 1, but that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, last year we saw Becton and Fant. They each missed a few games each, so he could be a spot starter in year 1. Hopefully to get to that. Hopefully we just stay healthy. But no, I mean, he's a good player, and obviously him and Wilson have that kind of familiarity with one another. That can only help a young quarterback. So if Christensen can fall to round 4, which I don't know if he will, because we tend to see the athletic offensive tackles go in the first 2-3 rounds. So I don't know if he falls, but if he does fall to 107, and we're just strictly talking about day 3, if he does fall to 107, I'd jump on it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch a little bit on those testing numbers we talked about, Clay. A 10.4 broad jump, which was as good, if not better, than Tristan Wirfs last year. He ran the dash in, I think, 4.89. Like, his testing numbers were ridiculous. And I think some people had some reservations around Christensen and maybe his athleticism, and that is probably, limiting his ceiling. But you really saw those numbers were terrific. They stood out, and he's going to be someone that's probably going to creep up the draft board. And I think you're right. He may go prior to day 3 in that middle to back end of the 3rd round.
Yeah, and
another guy. Yep.
So he's actually working with Duke Manyweather too, who many know is the same coach as Mekhi Becton and Cameron Clark. Don't forget about that. So I mean, he's getting coaching from one of the best coaches out there. Obviously, Manyweather is not a part or affiliated with any NFL team, but he's getting coached up by some of the best. He's practicing with some of the best. I mean, he's only going to get better. I know he's an older prospect. I believe he's 24, or he's going to be 24 in his rookie year, so he's a little bit older. But if you can get a quality player like him in the 4th round and a potential long-term starter, especially a tackle. I don't care if you're 24 years old, because, I mean, you can play for a long time at tackle. So, I mean, like I said, 107, I'm jumping all over. I'm sending in that card right away.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I like what you said about the possibility of, obviously, Fant is there in 2021. his contract, you can get out of it with no dead money next year. If you want to sit Christensen for a year, use him as that spot starter and then groom him to be the 2022 starter. That's a great option as well. We mentioned Christensen maybe not making it to day 3. Another guy, a friend of you stadiums, who I don't think is going to get there, but look, maybe Jets fans can hope he will, is Anthony Schwartz. So something the Jets offense has at the moment, a lot of big bodies, guys who can run over the middle, make those tough catches, probably lacking an element of speed. Anthony Schwartz, he is speed personified. I think it was a 4.26 in the 40-yard dash, which is just incredible. He's a playmaker at Auburn. What are your thoughts on Anthony Schwartz, where he goes, and the potential of the Jets drafting him and what he can add to the offense? Probably lack those home run hitters. So it's a really good fit in this scheme, in that kind of gadget role to start, and also the vertical threat as well. Another guy you mentioned this time in the running back, another guy who can, make big plays and hit those home runs, is Chuba Hubbard. Probably didn't have the best season this year in comparison to his 2019 tape. Is that something you tend to agree with? Do you think if he was drafted by the Jets, he'd step in and be the starter? Is it just still going to be a backfield by committee? What are your thoughts on Chuba Hubbard?
I think if Hubbard automatic starter, but in the Jets offense, I think he does fit the outside zone scheme. He's a one-cut kind of back, so he doesn't really need to. I think it's just a perfect fit for him. I know he had a really bad 2020 compared to his previous, I believe, 2 seasons. But if they can get him in the 5th, 6th round, which some believe that he could fall that far, I think if you get him, I don't know about the initial impact he has on the team, but I think in 2022, maybe 2023, he'll be a good player, especially in that 5th, 6th round if they do get him there. But actually, going into that running back, sorry if going on this little tangent, but they've met with a lot of running backs so far. So I was just looking it up. They've met with Jarrett Patterson, the running back out of Buffalo, Jamar Jefferson, running back out of Oregon State, Javian Hawkins out of Louisville, Khalil Herbert out of Virginia Tech, Michael Carter out of UNC, and excuse me if I get this wrong, Kenny Nwangwu, the running back from Iowa State. He wasn't the starter at Iowa State. He was behind Breece Hall. But they're meeting with a lot of running backs, and all of those guys, what they have in common, except for maybe Michael Carter, they're day 3 guys. They're day 3 guys, maybe sneaking into the 3rd round, a couple of them. But I think that's the sweet spot of where the Jets are going to be looking. Like, I know you want a lot of people want the sexy name of Najee Harris or Travis Etienne or Javonte Williams, but I just don't know if they're going to look that way, especially based off the names that I just read. They're going. I guarantee they're going to take a running back in sometime at day 3.
Yeah, Clay, quickly before we throw to John, looking at those names of people and draft picks the Jets have met with, are there any other names that kind of stand out to you in that day 3 range when you roll through that list of people they have met with already?
I do like Jamar Jefferson. I know we already talked about Anthony Schwartz. Another name I kind of like is Amir Smith-Marset, receiver out of Iowa. He's another speedy guy, and they're meeting with speedy receivers. They know they're lacking speed at the position, and I know that they're going to look that way. Maybe not draft one, but they're going to at least look in that direction. And I do like Amir Smith-Marset. At Iowa, he didn't really get the best opportunities. Like, he was getting open, but the quarterback just wasn't finding him. I feel like they've never really been known as a passing offense, so it kind of hurt him in that way. But I do like what he brings to the table. So if they can get him in that 4th, 5th round, I think that would be a really good get as well. They just need more playmakers, man, and that's what Smith does. That's what Smith is. That's what those running backs are. They just need a playmaker, and hopefully just get a diamond in the rough, because the Jets have been dying for one for decades.
So that pretty much sums up the day 3 picks we like for the Jets, and really the positions they're targeting. I think, as you mentioned, Clay, you can really see the areas they're looking to improve the team in by who they've brought in. They're not being particularly coy, trying to hide the positions of need and the skill sets they really want to add to this Shanahan-style offense. That's been picked up by us in the media. And speaking of media, we've got John Grella joining us on the phone today. For those guys who don't know John, he writes for playlikeajet.com and was the director of communications for the Buccaneers for a 4-year span. An incredible guy that knows a whole lot about football and about how it works behind the scenes. John, are you with us?
I am. Glad to be with you.
How you going, John? You well?
Yeah, we're good. I'm outside my kids' little league game, so don't mind warming up from the very windy day down here in Washington D.C.
Very good. So, John, for those who aren't familiar with the communications role you were in with the Bucks, can you give us a bit of a rundown of what that role entailed and kind of what your day-to-day was like when you were with the Bucks from 2010 to 2013?
Yeah, sure. So I've long been a sports nut, just like you guys, and a huge Jets fan. Had the daydream in about 2009 that I would love to take my political communications and corporate communications, crisis communications background and bring it to the NFL. Lo and behold, a year later, the Buccaneers retained Ari Fleischer, who was the White House press secretary, and they were looking for somebody specifically from DC who understood media and crisis and politics and all that jazz, and so I ended up ready for the opportunity when it came, and so that job entailed corporate communications, football communications, crisis, off the field stuff. You know, your players and transactions and statistics and whatnot, but also the off the field stuff, controversies, including the circus that is the NFL draft and the now full-time non-playing season that's every bit as hectic as the playing season.
Yeah, you touched on it there, John. The NFL draft is as big, if not bigger, than the NFL season, incredibly. They've done a fantastic job really expanding the season to run for 12 months. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Joe Douglas, Steve Young, Zach Wilson conversation that was happening about a week and a half ago, John, and about how, Joe was fairly candid with his comments about Steve Young being plugged into BYU. Clay and I mentioned it on the pod about, how maybe he didn't need to be smoke screening and could be transparent. Would you say that's pretty accurate? And at this point in the draft, is that kind of unusual to see that from an NFL team?
Well, yeah, everybody brings their unique style, and my advice usually to clients is to be true to yourself and authentic. I think it seems Joe Douglas's way to largely be wise and shrewd and keep his cards close to his vest. There's not a lot of leaking coming out of the building, which is very encouraging, but he also lets his personality shine through a little bit too. So I think his being playful is nice and refreshing, and he seems to be a little bit more of a moderate on the matter of that can be obsessive with a lot of coaches and executives, which is secrecy, privacy, and competitive advantage as a legit full-time obsession that could borderline on the unhealthy. So in this instance, I think that the most straightforward explanation is the best one, and that he probably has had conversations. Obviously knows who he's locked in on for the draft, and wasn't going to try to head fake a lot of people who were inclined to believe the truth. Oftentimes in communications and PR, it's very hard to defy logic. So if everyone believes that Wilson's the guy, and everyone believes that this pipeline of information is a legitimate one, meaning the BYU connection and so on, then you're really kind of, I would have said pissing in the wind if we weren't on a family broadcast, but you're really kind of going upstream, if you will, if when you try to disabuse people of a notion that seems like pretty patently obvious.
Yeah, I feel like we've dealt with that with Mike McCagnon and other GMs in the past, where they kind of just, like you said, were going upwind, and it was just useless because we all knew a certain direction that they were going. But speaking of Joe Douglas, though, like how do you think that Douglas and his regime managed to stay so tight-lipped throughout his year and a half of work and eliminate leaks? I feel like they've done a really good job so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. Well, first of all, it is a blessing, and I wish you could say that it was like genetic, right? But this obviously social media and whatnot came after Joe Douglas was born, but to be able to not ride the emotional roller coaster that is the media, ride the news cycle, be like totally plugged into Twitter and the conversation all the time and not live and die by comments on a message board. I've seen it happen. It could undo you. It could totally distract you. Thankfully, he's reasonable about it. He understands the game. He doesn't need it to be more than it is. Like, he understands that it's not the ball game itself. And pretty hard to compete with that on the merits, but sometimes that gets lost, right? Because you believe that your reputation is going to cost you your job, which is your ultimate consideration. So you want to try to manage your reputation and control the message, right? My view is that the communications people have to do their best to control the message. It's hard enough with a big football team and a lot of opportunities for leaks to come out. But I think that's an organizational culture thing. Starts from the top. And I think with Joe Douglas, who begets Robert Saleh, and Robert Saleh, who begets a PR director and so on, that you set a culture that we're going to be professional, but we're also not going to be the other extreme, which is paranoid, right? Like, you've seen those nightmare stories about when Scott Pioli was a GM in Kansas City, about paranoia and rumors of bugging and all this kind of stuff. And I'll just leave it there. But I've seen this both extremes, and I think we've got a good one in that he's well adjusted enough to know that football's what's important here, and not to live and die by the media cycle and make decisions for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, like you said, John, just in Cleveland a couple of years ago, we had Hugh Jackson, the head coach, who didn't know who they were taking at number 1 overall, just 24 hours out from the draft. So They have a tendency to lean, an extreme way as well.
It can get pretty unhealthy pretty quickly. And everybody knows the Parcells stories too, about buying out hotel rooms that looked over on his practice field. And I've certainly lived through a bunch of that myself. It can get pretty unhealthy and distracting, and it can really infect a whole culture. I do think that the Jets are in a very good position, because it seems like when you hire a GM and you hire a coach, you're not hiring a playbook or X's and O's or just that. You're hiring, real people who set a real culture, and they seem to have a real balanced perspective, great vision, leadership, management style that bodes well, and that you can't take that stuff for granted. It isn't all about the X's and O's.
Yeah, for sure, John. I wanted to ask you quickly. About a week ago, we had Dan Orlovsky come out in the media, and he talked a little bit about Justin Fields and things that were leaked to him by sources about him being last in the building and first out. Those kind of leaks and information, do you think, obviously it's a bit of a guess and speculation, but do you think they're coming from a team trying to drop his draft stock? What goes into the information and snippets that media members are leaked?
Yeah, that's a great theory, and it's always, I always call it the game of Clue, right? You're trying to figure out what, whether it was Colonel Mustard or Professor Plum in the observatory with the lead pipe or the candlestick or whatnot. And in this instance, there's a lot of different directions and a lot of different motivations that such a leak could come from. Any number of teams are linked to Fields, not only in the top 10, but heck, the Patriots and a lot of other teams are probably watching what he's going to do. So the universe of people, or I should say angles that it's coming from, or buildings that it's coming from, are limitless. And you obviously have any number of reasons to help him. I'm sorry, to hurt him, or because you like him so much that you want him to fall to you. So the motivations are many also. So sources, many. Motivations, many. Whether or not it's accurate is an unknown. I'm sorry for somebody else's car alarm going off as I'm talking to you. That's a little subterfuge from the Patriots, I think. Anyway, and so that could happen for any number of reasons. So in this instance, it's unclear who it's coming from or why, but this stuff is real. And the last thing I'll say about it, guys, is sometimes it just happens where, hearsay or a scout is just emptying out his bag of opposition research and told somebody who told somebody, right? And it didn't need to be strategic. It was just a juicy nugget that was relatable, repeatable, and oh so irresistible to media types or pundits. So it could be for no legitimate or strategic reason.
Yeah, completely fair enough. I wanted to ask you one last question, John, just around the relationship between media members and front offices in general. Whether it be the big guys of the world like Schefter and Rappaport, beat writers, guys like Matt Miller. What's their relationship like as far as leaking information, what they get out of it, how teams utilize them as almost a mouthpiece? What's that dynamic like between the media and NFL front offices?
That's an awesome question, and I think that depends so much on the reporter himself or the personality, him or herself. Somebody like Schefter, for example, who I work with a lot, you'll notice that he is so wired, not only because he works incredibly hard, because he doesn't burn people too. And I mean that in the best possible way. You have bad news to share, that it's eventually going to get out there anyway. You might want to leak it to Shefty because he's not going to douse it in gasoline and make the, 3-alarm fire a 5-alarm fire, right? That's not his style. So he has people's trust, and he's a good fit for tighter-lipped organizations or ones that are sensitive to media coverage. He's good for really anybody because he just is good at building relationships. And then obviously there are other guys that you might seek out or might seek you out that like a different kind of story, that maybe aren't as careful or meticulous about sourcing and whatnot. There are even some that are transactional, meaning like they're explicitly like, you give me one, I'll do you a solid down the road or whatever. And that stuff happens too. Unfortunately that exists, but it does. The reality is it does. So that I think a lot of times, every organization and the principals, be it the coach, the GM, maybe an owner, maybe a coordinator or player, they all have their kind of favorites, the people they have a good rapport with and people that they trust. And anybody who deals with media knows that trust is really, really important. It's in short supply. It shouldn't be as hard as it is. But I think a lot of times when we're talking about reporters who are under a lot of pressure to get content out, have scoops, be plugged in, look good and show off, that you kind of will things to be true, something that's not a fully baked story or not full, or maybe not confirmed or whatever, and you want to go with it because it's juicy and it's you kind of, there's some wishful thinking going on. People understand the game, and that's just kind of how it goes. The teams that live and die again by the media are taking their eye off the ball. And then there are other ones who understand that it's a reality, have made peace with that reality, and have a healthy relationship with it. And in those instances, you could really use the media to your advantage and help control the narrative or the message, which is every PR director's dream. It's the GM and coach's dream to win football games. Of course, life's easier for a PR director when the team wins, but the PR director's job is to control the message, not everybody else's. But it certainly does make things a heck of a lot easier when there's lower drama and more focus on football.
Yeah, I actually want to speak on that a little bit too, because I remember when I was in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, I was hearing something that the Jets reached out to a national writer, and they were asking him to talk down a particular cornerback that they really wanted, and they wanted him to say like, no, he's not good, he blah blah blah, and just kind of just hope that this cornerback would fall to them. Ultimately, they didn't take him, so you don't have to go too deep into it. But yeah, I know this stuff happens, and they kind of are just puppets in some way, and it can be transactional, or it can just be a friend helping a friend.
That's right. That's why I always look at, when I see information, you look at who it affects and how, who would be motivated to perpetuate such a story, who are those people close to,
right? So you kind of work back from whatever it is, the players involved, who benefits from it, who's motivated by it, and work your way out of there. And then you can kind of start to hone in on or zero in on the, the universe of people that could be the culprit, if you will, or the source of it.
It's a fascinating dynamic, John, one that we don't get much of an insight to as the general public. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing, everything that you know and your expertise on the area. Before I let you go back to your Little League game, I'm going to put you on the spot. At picks number 23 and pick number 2, respectively, have a bit of a stab in the dark. Where do you think the Jets will go at 2 and 23?
My very strong wish for months now has been one wide receiver, one interior offensive lineman, and you can go in whatever order you choose as long as we cover those bases. Both of those are deep positions, but that doesn't necessarily mean weight. I'd love to get one of the top guys at either of those positions early. I hate drafting according to need, but I'm going to have a hard time getting terribly excited about it. An inside linebacker, even as David Collins or whatever, or one of the other great players that are out there. So let's hope that we grab another weapon. You can never have too many. You know what? Let's worry about corner and the defense later. We can't repeat past mistakes. We need to foster and build a healthy and productive and prolific offense for once, so that the field doesn't look 200 yards long every time our quarterback has the ball in his hands.
There you have it. John Grella, Director of Communications with the Bucks and now writer at playlikeajet.com. John, thanks for joining us, man. It's always a pleasure. And I hope the win comes down there in DC.
Thanks so much, guys. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, John. An incredible insight, Clay, into the world of the media and the NFL. When I think about this, I think of Matt Miller a couple of years ago when McCagnon was there and the relationship that Matt Miller had with the Jets front office, and he was doing some media work for us. And then when Mike McCagnon left, the change in tone in Matt Miller and the way he describes and discusses the New York Jets. So it's really a fascinating area, isn't it?
Yeah, especially once I got down to Mobile, because I went down there 3 years in a row, and I got to meet some people that had different relationships, and it was cool to see how actual media, because I know we would like to call ourselves media, but we're not quite at that level yet. So when I do speak to these kind of guys and the connections that they have with front offices, GMs, agents, it's very fascinating how they all try to not use each other, but use each other to get what they want in a way. But like I said, it doesn't always have to be like that. It could just be a friend helping a friend. They do have a genuine connection and all right, I got you here. And then I know you'll help me out down the road. It's no big deal. So it is very fascinating. And it's going to happen forever. And it's never going to go away.
Exactly right. So now let's shift our attention a little bit towards the NFL draft. And towards Zach Wilson. So let's talk about the BYU offense and some similarities that I've seen on tape between that and what Shanahan and LaFleur were rolling out with the 49ers. And now obviously the Jets running an iteration of that offense as well, with Mike LaFleur coming over from San Francisco. So I guess before we get started, Clay, I think of the BYU offense as a lot of motion, a lot of play action, a zone running game. Do you think that really accentuates Zach Wilson's strengths as a player and the things he does well? Yeah,
Getting jet motion and a lot of pre-snap motion, that's what all the best offenses use. So it's obviously going to help Zach Wilson, but it's going to help any quarterback out. And then when you get him going in play action, when you get him on bootlegs, that gets a player like Zach Wilson, a mobile quarterback. It puts them in an area of strength. And that's what we were asking for the Jets to do with Darnold for all these years, because we know what he can do out of the pocket as well. We've seen it over the last 3 years, but they just refuse to do it for some reason. So I think BYU did a good job of utilizing him the right way, getting him into an area that he feels very comfortable with. Because I was watching QB 21 with Kirk Herbstreit and Zach Wilson earlier today. And Kirk put up a stat saying that his stats, completion percentage stats and all that stuff, are very similar in and out of the pocket. Whereas he is very good out of the pocket. So get him into those kind of situations to where he can flourish, where some quarterbacks and some defenses might struggle. So I think BYU did a very good job utilizing him in that way.
Yeah, the first area I wanted to touch on was the play action passing game. So Splash, if you wanted to throw up our first clip now, you're going to see here at the top of the screen, excuse me, you're going to see kind of an over route. And then from the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a post route. So this is a combination that the 49ers used time and time again. So as we let it roll through now, you're just going to see motion which stretches the defense horizontally, and then the vertical push. So for the top of the screen, the over route, and then you see Zach Wilson hitting that deep post. It's a fantastic route combination, especially against single high coverage. So you're going to see, number one, the jet motion, which stretches the linebackers vertically and brings them down into the box. The over route, which you see 83 flashing across the screen, he's going to then attract the center field safety, whether it's in man coverage or in a cover 3. And then I want you to watch the center fielder as he bites, just how much room that leaves behind on the post. So that's a really awesome concept, something that I know the 49ers used. And Splash, if we want to transition now to the 49ers iteration of that, so I think it's clip number 3 on the screen there. The 49ers do a great job of this with guys like Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. Clay, obviously the Jets don't have a George Kittle at the tight end position. How do you think they work around that as far as some of this play action passing game and utilizing the receivers?
I mean, I wouldn't say that they don't have a George Kittle. I think Tyler Kroft can be the next version of him. No,
Sure.
I'm just messing around. But no, I mean, honestly, with the receivers that they have on their offense right now, I think that kind of play is going to be utilized quite a bit. I mean, we saw Corey Davis do that a lot in Tennessee. We know that Denzel Mims, he can stretch the field in that kind of way if they want to use him on the deep post or an over route. Either way, you can kind of just flip-flop them if they're both on the outside, which they most likely will be with Jameson Crowder still on the roster, and he'll be the primary slot receiver. So I expect to see that that kind of play pretty much every single week that the Jets play, and it's going to be a very vital play to their playbook.
Yeah, so let's now look at the San Francisco 49ers running it a little bit reversed. So this time you're going to see George Kittle at the bottom of the screen as the inline tight end. He's going to run the over or the speedo route, and you're going to see the post coming from the top of the screen. So if we let it roll through, you're going to see the exact same formation, heavy outside zone play action, the over route underneath. This time they hit the over route for a first down. But if we watch it through one more time, you're going to see how open not only the under route or the over route is, but also the post. Look how naked the post gets. As soon as this free safety drives on the football, the post is open too. It's a fantastic concept, and BYU and the 49ers both run it a ton. And as we said, Denzel Mims and Corey Davis, they run a lot of that, have run a lot of that in the past, and it really suits their skill set. Both of them have kind of sneaky deep speed, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I think we're going to see a lot of that.
And one thing that also makes that play work too is that the Niners have done a very good job of utilizing the running game. The game has to be recognized, and that's going to force linebackers to kind of follow the play action a little more. The Jets haven't been able to do that. They haven't had an efficient running game the past few years, so they have to kind of get that together. And once they can get that together, that play is going to be even bigger for that offense, because the linebackers and the defensive line will follow the play action, allowing Zach Wilson to get some time and allowing the tight end to be open, or whoever it is that get open on that crossing route. And then if your receiver can beat the cornerback and the deep safety one-on-one or one-on-two, they can get open for that too. So it's going to be a team effort. It's not just going to be Zach Wilson. It's going to be the entire all 11 players. And I mean, hopefully they can get some guys in this draft to help that happen.
Exactly. I think you make a great point with the zone running game and the importance of that. They use motion and the play action so effectively to draw in the linebackers and open up that second level in the passing game. And it's going to be really important that they fix that offensive line properly in the draft to open up that facet of the passing game. Something that Shanahan and LaFleur did terrifically well in San Francisco was bounce plays off one another. And I've talked about this on Twitter a few times. What I mean by that is we just saw them running that crossing route post combination. They then set defenses up. They know it's going to be coming, so they run in a different iteration of that play. So the next one we're going to look at, I guess you'd call it an option route. So as BYU's coming to run the crosser, they then kind of fake out of it in the third clip and you're going to see them almost fake back towards the sideline. So we'll try and get that on screen for you now for clip number 3. But again, it just emphasizes how important it is for NFL offenses to roll plays off one another. So what I want you to focus on watching here is the top of the screen, the receiver at the top of the screen. He's the guy that's been running that over route or the crossing route that we've talked about ad nauseum that we just saw George Kittle running in San Francisco. So what he's trying to do is set the corner and the deep safety up that he's going to be running the over, but you'll watch halfway through, he pivots back to the left at the top of the screen and runs that kind of option route. So as we let it roll here, I want you to focus on the top of the screen. It looks exactly the same schematically as the post over. You see it here, and then he just pivots on his route and finds that soft spot against what ends up being a cover 2 shell. So this is what Shanahan and LaFleur do masterfully well. Again, looks like the crossing route. We've seen it before. Oh, no, turns his back inside out and then hits the hole against what looks like a cover 2 shell. So something they do really well and bounce plays off one another. And the 49ers do it too. I think it was against Arizona last year, which is the next clip. They do a masterful job of hiding what they're trying to do. They're not being shy about the concepts they're running. They just do so well at bouncing them off one another and confusing the offense. So we see it here. This time, the bottom of the screen, I think it might be Mullins playing quarterback in this game, to be honest. As it rolls through, bottom of screen, you're going to see the over route, except he's going to run an option based on the safety biting and then sits in that soft spot of the zone. So again, schematically for the defense, it looks exactly like the post over combination, but just that pivot or stop route opens up space. They don't hit it in this case, but it's a really nice concept. And Clay, I think it's fantastic how they bounce these plays off one another.
Yeah, good offenses do that. I think it was either this year or maybe last year. The Gators did that. I remember a particular I want to say it was Dan Orlovsky. He was kind of just breaking down the Gators offense, and they just dominated using the same I think it was like 4 different plays, but all just a variation of one particular kind of, I guess, schematic offense. And it's just, and good teams know how to utilize that and know when to utilize it. So as you saw there, I mean, they got big plays every time that they changed it up. I mean, it's going to be vital. I mean, we're still not sure what's going to happen with I was going to say Shanahan, LaFleur as the offensive coordinator. We don't know if he's exactly going to bring this Shanahan type offense or if he's going to bring more of his brother's offense from Green Bay. Either way, I mean, this kind of offense is still going to be similar in some ways, and I think this is part of the one of the ways that they are very similar.
So something, as you touched on there, that's probably a little more in the Green Bay playbook is some of these mesh concepts out of shotgun. And that's what we're going to move to with our next clip now. So ironically, they're running mesh. I may have put one too many. Can we jump to the next one if you don't mind, Splash? Sorry, I've pulled the wrong clip up. But even though this is a standard mesh concept, what this is going to emphasize is how well Zach Wilson plays outside of structure. The next 2 clips are both meant to be very basic, shallow crosses, drags, but Zach Wilson turns it into something extremely special with his pocket presence and his ability to make plays out of structure. So as it rolls through here, from the back end view, you're going to see very simple mesh. Mason Wake runs that hook in behind the mesh, but it's just the escapability and the maneuverability in the pocket of Zach Wilson that makes this extremely special. He turns a simple concept that doesn't work in this case. Look at the way he evades the interior pressure, finds the shovel pass, and his ability to make plays out of structure. That's what makes him special, Clay. Would you kind of agree with that breakdown?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know like he has a special arm talent, but it's the escapability, the ability to make a play out of the pocket, not just from like left to right, but also in front too, and I guess in behind. He does a very good job of that, and that's why he's most likely going to be the 2nd overall pick. Yeah, he does a lot of great things, but it's that ability that he gets compared to. Maybe he shouldn't be compared to these 2 greats, but he does get compared to Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers for that exact reason, because of what he can do out of structure. And it's frankly just exciting to see.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's jump into the next play. Again, it's mesh. This is my favorite play of the year, not just from Zach Wilson, but in college football in general. What you're going to see at the bottom of the screen is a bit of a high-low concept, and then over the middle of the field, you have a mesh. Zach Wilson doesn't see what he likes against a 3-man rush. He escapes the pocket, and I'm pretty sure everyone's seen this play at this point, but he rolls to his right and then hits an incredible downfield back shoulder pass. So let's roll it through now, Splash. You're going to
ask for anything better. And him and Milne, they obviously have a connection. Milne, I'm sure, was watching him. Wilson kept his eyes down the field. He wasn't looking to run, even though he had some space to run if he needed to. I think he has so many flashes when playing the quarterback position. And, yeah, I know Darnold had that same kind of ability out of the pocket, but I don't know. There's just something a little bit different about Wilson in that, one, he protects the ball a little bit better, but it's just those kind of plays are just going to be so huge for this offense because especially with the Jets' offensive line, it's just not that great. So Wilson is going to have to make plays out of structure, and he's shown it time and time and time again throughout the 2020 season.
Yeah, you mentioned the similarities between his big playability and Sam Darnold's and the flash plays. I think that's 100% accurate. But as we've discussed quite a bit, Clay, it's the ability to avoid turnovers that really separates him. Sam obviously struggled with that at USC, and Zach did a good job of protecting the ball. Only had 3 interceptions this year, and one of those was on a Hail Mary against Coastal Carolina on halftime. So definitely has the upside and the playmaking ability of Sam, hopefully with the limited turnovers in the NFL. Clay, you mentioned the running game and the importance of that in the play action passing game and how that draws in the linebackers. So let's finish just quickly on a clip that actually reminded me more of the Packers and what Matt LaFleur runs and how he runs the zone running game out of shotgun. So we'll look at BYU and how they get their offensive linemen to climb to the second levels and take on blocks and then open up space in the inside and outside running game. So if we get the last clip up now for a Splash, you're going to have the running back is going to hit in the end the B gap. So you're going to see the center and the right guard. They're going to double team the one tech, and they're going to climb to the linebacker, who I think is in number 0 there, and they're going to take him out of the play. 71 is going to kick out and seal that edge and open up the hole. So as we let it flow now, I love the way they address the double team, get to the second level. And this is what you're going to see from the Jets time and time again. Guys like Fant and Becton and even interior offensive linemen like Connor McGovern. Connor McGovern is extremely good at climbing to the second level and reach blocking and these kind of things that you'll see in the zone running game. This is a staple you'll see of the Jets, whether they want to do it out of shotgun like you see BYU do it here, or whether they want to do it kind of more out of the 49ers playbook under center with a fullback. But the zone running game is going to be a huge feature and very significant for the Jets in 2021.
Yeah, and that's why you need athletic interior linemen. I mean, I know this isn't the most athletic play, but a lot of times these guys are going to be having to pull. They're going to have to climb to the second level, and you need athleticism to do that. I mean, yeah, you can get a Deontay Brown and kind of just manhandle people, but he's also probably running close to us. I can probably run a faster 40-yard dash. That's not saying much. I can't run very fast. But, I mean, you got to have some sort of athleticism. And right now, I don't know if Van Roten is really that kind of guy. Alex Lewis is a little more athletic, I believe, than Van Roten, but that's why we're hyping up Kendrick Green. Like those are the kinds of players that they need on the interior, and to make this offense, this run scheme, really, really work, because it's going to be important. And yeah, we're taking a young quarterback, but I think even if he is a top 10 quarterback in the next couple of years, they're still going to want to run the ball very much and efficiently. And it all starts with the offensive line and getting the guys that fit that offense.
Yeah, you just touched on Kendrick Green. He was a guy that you and the Jets fans have mocked to the team in the past. And I went back and watched a lot more of him this week. And, man, his ability to reach block, to get out in the second level and seal, the way he flips his hips and feet, he's an incredible player. Would you take him at 66? Do you think that's too high? Do you think he'll still be there? I know it's a little off topic, but I just wanted to touch on Kendrick Green because he's a guy that's really captured Jets fans' attentions throughout the week.
66, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it depends on how the board falls. I mean, I'm going through these mock draft simulators constantly because of my mock draft Mondays. And some of the names I see pop up, I'm like, yeah, I don't think we can take Green this high. But if they were to take him at 66, or even, we'll just say before 86, like say they trade back from 66 to 76, like I'd be okay with it. But 86, he somehow falls there, which is definitely still a possibility, considering that not every team runs a zone running scheme, and he's not going to fit every offense. So he definitely could fall to 86. He could even fall to 107. I wouldn't be shocked to see that either. But if he were there at 66 and they were to take him, I personally wouldn't be upset because I am a very big fan of his, and I think he'd add something that they desperately need, whether it's center or guard, because I don't really know where they, considering that they didn't sign an offensive lineman, I would think that they see McGovern as a center. So I would push Green to guard for at least 1 year, but I'd be happy with him. I think he's a very good player. And he does fit what they need, and he is very athletic.
An open invitation, Kendrick Green, come on the show next week or after the Jets draft you on Thursday. We're going to finish with some questions, Clay. If you've got any questions, you're listening on YouTube or on Periscope or anywhere where you can find us, make sure you get in the chat and ask us some questions. The first one here, do you think there's any chance the Jets would draft Dax Milne to pair with Zach Wilson since he was a go-to guy at BYU? Before I get you to answer that, Clay, the connection between Milne and Wilson goes even deeper than that. They've been playing Pee Wee football together since they were 11 or 12 or something in that range. So they've been teammates for a very long time. He snuck into your fan mock last week. Talk about how you'd feel if Dax Milne was drafted by the Jets.
Yeah, it kind of wouldn't be like a little reminiscent of the Jets drafting that receiver that was teammates with Mark Sanchez in high school. I forget the name's escaping me. It was like Scotty something.
Yeah, it's left me too.
Yeah, I can't quite remember, but it'd be a little reminiscent. But Dax Milne is worthy of being drafted in this upcoming draft, whether it's 6th, 7th round. Obviously, we just don't have any 7th rounders right now. But if they were to draft him, one, I do think it is realistic. I'm sure they want to try to help him out, help Zach Wilson out as much as possible, and getting a familiar face in the locker room is only going to help. It's not going to hurt whatsoever. And I mean, they need a receiver, obviously. Like, they need depth because we've already gone down the amount of names that Darnold had to pass to over the last 3 years. So maybe you just get Milne. He comes in as, I don't know, the 6th receiver, and it only plays in depth, like injury situations. So I definitely do think it's a possibility. I just don't know where they would take him.
Hey, maybe Dax Milne can be like Deontay Burnett in the way he saved Sam Darnold's career. So maybe we could see a resurrection there. Let's move on to another question here from Nick. He said, "What's going on, boys? Quick question for you. We see a lot of cornerbacks in the NFL get to the spotlight and pay dues to the defensive line pressure. Would you be opposed to adding a defensive end at 23?
I'll let you start off with that one.
Look, personally, I know it's been a bit of a topic, but I would love a guy like Kwity Paye. He fell in a U Stadium fan mock draft last week. Azeez Ojulari. I'm all for that. I think building on a strength is something the San Francisco did when Robert Saleh was there as the defensive coordinator. And I'm not opposed or in this line of thinking the Jets need to take an offensive tackle or a cornerback there. If the board falls and Greg Newsome and the 3 other cornerbacks are off the board and Tevin Jenkins is gone, taking Ojulari or another edge is a great move for me. It's a no-brainer. If you can't find a corner who's going to step in and bring above average play in day one, the best thing you can do for them, as Nick alluded to, was increase the pass rush, especially at a premium position. It's not like you're bringing in a off-ball linebacker and you already have an abundance of talent there. With the defensive line, you can easily fit these pieces together, rotate through. And even as it is now, the Jets don't really have a bona fide stud starter opposite Carl Lawson. Obviously, they have Vinny Curry and Huff and Zuniga and a few guys they can rotate through, but they really still need a starter outside of that. While it might not be ideal from a need perspective, I would completely be on board with the Jets taking a defensive end at 23.
Yeah, I mean, opposed? No, I wouldn't be opposed. But I do think, and I'm kind of getting to this this thought now when it comes to defensive ends at 23. I think if Vera Tucker's gone, Jenkins is gone, I guess maybe too early for Humphrey or Dickerson, and then the top 3 corners are gone. Because right now I don't really want to touch Farley. I think if they're all gone, I would prefer to trade back, even if Kwity Paye, Ojulari, all these guys are on the board, just because all of them do have question marks. There's no concrete number one edge. Yeah, I do like Pay. I do like Ojulari, but I think maybe trade back and you can get. Honestly, you can maybe get Ojulari at 34, but say you trade back from 23 to we'll say just 28. You can probably still get Ojulari. Jason Owe is an interesting name. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of him, but he is an athletic freak, so that could be something that they're very interested in. But I think if we're just talking about edges and defensive end, since we're running a four-man front, I think I would prefer to trade back than to take one at 23 because at the very least, you can still get capital for later in the draft or next year.
Yeah, two great points there, Clay. The first one is I think if, let's say, Newsom and Jenkins are both off the board, I think Douglas is going to look to trade back and find more value and recoup another day 2 pick. That was a really good point and something I think we could definitely see on draft day. The second interesting topic is Jason Owe. He's a really polarizing player. Obviously, out of Penn State, opted out this year. No, sorry, he played 4 or 5 games this year, didn't have a sack, which is a semi-meaningless sack, but a stat, sorry. But he's a player that obviously tested, out of the gym, jumped out of the gym, ran extremely well, but I didn't always see the athleticism on tape. Like, obviously, there were flashes of it. And ironically, my player comparison for him is Montez Sweat, who was a guy that I watched on tape and thought, he's a little stiff. I'm not sure I see the athleticism. And then he came into his pro day and just absolutely killed it. And it's why I'm a little bit worried about missing in my evaluation of Jason Owe. I'm a little low on him. He'll probably end up in the late 40s for me on my big board. And I think he could be better than that. So he's a little bit of a scary prospect for me. But I think if the Jets were to trade back, Owe would be a guy they could look to target in the 30s. I think we have a couple of more questions to roll through before we sign off for the night. Kyle, got a question for you guys. Have you looked into Shi Smith at all?
So me personally, I haven't actually watched his film, but every time South Carolina played the Gators, I did have my eye on Shi Smith because the name Shi Smith kept popping up. He kept catching the ball. I really did like him. He was a pest, but I did like him. Just like I loved Deebo Samuel. I liked Brian Edwards last year. This is the third guy of that trio, that original trio. And I don't know where he falls in this draft exactly. He could be I think he'll be a day 3 guy. But if they can snag him in round 5, I'd be all for it. I think he's a good receiver. He'd most likely be a slot in this offense. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. I don't have his measurements right in front of me. But I do like the player. And like I said, they need help at receiver. They need depth. So, yeah, round 5, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I just pulled up his combine, or not his combine, sorry, his pro day numbers in front of me. He ran a 4.43. As we've talked about, they're inflated. I'm pretty sure we'd be running 4.4s this year, Clay, if we had people testing for us. At 186 pounds, his jumping numbers and his cones were pretty good. He ran a 6.83 cone, which is in the 71st percentile. We saw Denzel Mims run a 6.66 last year. So he's a relatively good athlete. I think you're right. He'd be in that slot role. And if the Jets don't take a wide receiver early in the draft, then I think Shi Smith would probably be, quite a good selection in that late 4th, early 5th range. Last one, any thoughts on drafting Jalen Camp from GT as a late rounder? Not a guy I've watched a ton of, Clay. Is he someone that you've seen much of or come across much on film?
Honestly, no. I wish I can have some kind of insight on him, but Georgia Tech has never been an offense I've really wanted to watch ever since the whole Stephen Hill debacle. So Jalen Camp, no, I'm sorry. I don't really have any information on him.
Yeah, obviously a wide receiver out of Georgia Tech. Not a guy I've watched a ton of either. Look, why don't we circle back and maybe touch on him? I know he's a bigger guy. I think he's 6'2" off the top of my head. I know some people have kind of made some comparisons between him and someone like a Hakeem Butler or some of these guys who maybe struggle to separate a little bit but are very good at the catch point. It's always a bit of an interesting discussion whether contested catches is actually a good or a bad trait coming out in the draft. And he's kind of in that mold of receiver. 6'2", 220 pounds, and good at the catch point. Is that a pro? Is it going to be, an issue that he didn't separate? What's your kind of take on that, Clay, as far as contested catches versus lap of separation and how that kind of all comes together for prospects as they hit the NFL?
I don't know. That was kind of the thing with the CeeDee Lamb a little bit. He was great in contested situations, and it's obviously a very important skill in the NFL because these cornerbacks are better than they were in college. So you want to see that they can make contested catches at a fairly high rate. So I don't really take it as like, they can't separate, because yeah, you want to see separation, of course. But if they can't separate in the NFL, but they can still make the catches, no, they might not have a ton of yak to their name, a la DeAndre Hopkins. But just like DeAndre Hopkins, like, he comes down with these crazy catches, and he's still one of the best receivers in the league. I think he's a perfect example because I think before this past year, because I'm pretty certain he had a pretty good year yards after the catch. But before this year, it was never his forte. He was kind of a contested catch kind of guy. Got him maybe a couple of yards here and there after the catch, and just that was it. But he would catch 5, 6, 7 balls a game, and he's consistently one of the best receivers in the league. And we saw what he was able to do for that Arizona offense and for Deshaun Watson, because obviously they went from playoff team to 4-12 without DeAndre Hopkins. So, I mean, contested catch situation, like if that's like their main thing, and they're not like a great separator, it's not the end all be all. Because obviously you want to see separation, but you can still be a quality receiver if you can consistently catch balls in those kind of situations. Consistently, yeah, that's the key word.
I think without being an expert on camp and only watching a couple of his games, more watching other players, I'd say he's ironically in the mold of a guy that you loved, which was Kelvin Harmon. I think he's a really similar body type and receiver to him. I don't know he's the best fit for the Jets just because of the larger bodies they already have on the outside with Denzel Mims, Corey Davis. I think they may be looking more for that speed receiver like a Schwartz or a Darden, or someone that can play on the inside as well. So I think that's more the receiver type that the Jets will be looking for. Doesn't mean Camp isn't a good player. Obviously had some success at Georgia Tech, but I don't think he's the profile the Jets will be looking to draft. So Clay, we're 8 days away. We're getting extremely close. Feeling a little nervous. Big show next week. I can't wait for it. Looks like, hopefully, Anthony Schwartz is going to be joining us. He was on Timeout, a U Stadium show that if you aren't watching already, make sure you check that out. And as I mentioned, make sure you go onto the U Stadium app and you check out the mock draft competition. Click on the banner at the top of the screen, chances to win Xbox jerseys, draft hats, and everyone loves a mock draft, so why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Clay, we've got one more of these to go before the draft. I can't believe we're already here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been looking forward to this since probably my birthday, which is late September. We were already 0-3, maybe only 0-2 at that point. But I've been looking forward to this day, and it's coming around. We only got a week left, pretty much, and this is a new start to a new Jets franchise.
Yeah, extremely exciting. Make sure you're keeping an eye out over the next couple of days for what U Stadium and Play Like a Jet Live will be doing on the night of the NFL draft. The first day is also my birthday, so it's going to be an absolutely wild one. Make sure you check in with Scott, Nick, myself, Clay, Splash, and the entire U Stadium and Play Like a Jet teams. We're both looking forward to it. Clay, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Splash killing it today behind the cameras and behind the scenes. That's Play Like a Jet Live. We've got one episode to go before the NFL draft, and thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on a Wednesday.